Philosophy is a complex and long storied history of thought. And if anything, people thinking about thought, as it were, the people that, such as myself, are referred to as philosophers. And they go all the way back to as long as brains have been around, really. Uh, Here we see the different regions of the mind. This is called a mind map in the philosophical industry. There are several key baked-in things that we are all innately capable of, such as combativeness, veneration, and tune. We all have a natural rhythm, as we all know. Language, if you can see there, is in the eye. Many people think are actually in the ear, but we, as the Italians will show you, they gesture a lot, and that conveys far more meaning. We have the parental love in the back of the head, because although we may not like our parents all the time, we do love them, and it's in the back there, I can assure you. Self-esteem, sort of around the crown, that's very important. Right, so this man here is possibly one of the first philosophers, called Jeffrey Timmerman. And he said, just because you are persistent doesn't necessarily mean you are not feminine. And I couldn't agree more. You see, throughout history, it's seen as persistence being a male sort of characteristic, but that's not necessarily true. That is a myth that came around in the Victorian era. Women can be very, very persistent. It is, if anything, of the natural spirit that comes forth. Femininity is more of a perspective, as it were, completely unrelated to persistence. There is soft femininity and there is persistent femininity. This ties into a lot of feminist philosophy, because as you are aware, through to a lot of protests, feminism is very persistent and will persist. Risk-taking can be to never let go. Now, why have I put this next to bubbles? Now, bubbles are a great thought experiment amongst many philosophers. They represent risk-taking in the Western idiom. If you have a bubble and it is a film around a void, consider the void inside to be a risk. Now, when many bubbles come together, the film causes a sort of matrices, and we can ensure ourselves against that risk and against the void. As I believe Voltaire said, if you look into the void will look back at you. And that means if you hold on to the bubbles around you, you can never let go and be a risk taker. Now, I put this in, it's interesting. Be the first to try to communicate what rational people believe is uncommunicable. There are 6 levels of uncommunicable. The first level, on the left, you can see that there are 3 sub-tiers. These are referred to as early uncommunicable, present uncommunicable, and future uncommunicable. On the right, we see what the Eastern philosophers refer to as the positive uncommunicable. Now, these 6 levels, they increase in complexity. So the first level may be something uncommunicable like a wry smile. What could that mean? If you say in 46% of the case in pre-incommunicable, it could mean, I agree with what you say, but in the latter stages, it could mean something completely different. And here we see it taken further still. We have just over 20% advanced uncommunicable ideas. And then there are complex ideas that are just under 50%. Operational ideas, well, they're much easier to get. They're like, what am I going to have for dinner? And they're just over 55% there. And then basic, it goes down again, because it doesn't matter how simply you explain something to somebody, sometimes you just won't get it. Contemplate that the cheaper the motivation, the cheaper universe. Now, most people don't think the universe as being very motivated. But if you think about it, the Big Bang was just a big burst of energy at the beginning, and then it sort of peters out like a habit. If you've ever tried to start a habit, you get very enthusiastic at the beginning, and then it sort of tapers out. If you will not ask for forgiveness, someone else will. Now, I find this incredibly interesting. Here we see on the right is an example of the very first apology. It was an apology from the Carthaginians to the Egyptians on behalf of the Greeks, who were not involved in the slightest. But the Carthaginians felt like they needed to apologize anyway. There was a lot of stuff happening over there at the time. Not all of it was very, very popular, shall we say. A lot of people sort of in amphitheaters discussing things, plucking chickens and calling them man. And the Carthaginians were just like, oh, maybe the Egyptians wouldn't like that. They've got their own sort of bird people, and they might find that offensive. So we'll apologize, just put that insurance in there. And if anything, that was the first philosophical debate on a worldwide scale. So I think I've pretty much covered everything there. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And I thank you very much for allowing me to talk.